Apparently, the tough start in 10 games was enough for Mike Elias and the Orioles as the O's have decided to send their top prospect, Jackson Holliday, back down to AAA. I'll break down what the move means, what the corresponding move was, and why some of it makes sense and some of it a little confusing to figure out. That's coming up on this live Friday episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Friday, April 26th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's live episode, again, if you are watching live, thank you so much, right here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also going to get this one out in an audio version shortly after here on Friday afternoon. Didn't plan to do a Friday episode this week, but got my voice back, which was nice. And of course, we had a big piece of Orioles breaking news on Friday afternoon, which we are going to get to. Jackson Holliday, the Orioles' top prospect who has come up and has certainly struggled at the plate for the Orioles, is being sent back down to AAA. Ryan McKenna has been recalled for the first time this season to take his place. I'm going to break down everything that goes on with the move, what the future of Holliday looks like, what the Orioles lineup looks like for now. All that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. So it is, of course, the big news here. Jackson Holliday sent to AAA. And if you do have questions on today's episode, please put them in the chat. If you're watching live on YouTube, put them in the chat right here. Put them in the comments. On the final segment of the show today, I will get to any questions, any comments put in the chat here. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining live. But let's get to the bigger part of this news, the more important part of this news, that Jackson Holliday is back in AAA Norfolk. We know Holliday, who has only had one full season in the minors, drafted number 1 overall out of high school in 2022, a fantastic minor league season where he went all the way from low A to AAA throughout the 2023 campaign, had a good spring training. The Orioles talked about how he had a chance to make the team, and I thought, and many thought by the end of spring training, that he had done enough to earn an opening day roster spot. Now, the Orioles didn't think the same and sent him down to AAA Norfolk to begin the season. But, and I was worried, as many were, that this was a service time manipulation thing. They were going to keep him down for a month, call him up, just to get the extra year of service time. But I was pleasantly surprised when the Orioles called him back up before that service time deadline. They brought him up in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, wow, maybe it really was. They just wanted to get his bat a little hot in AAA, have him play a little more second base, and avoid a lot of left-handed starting pitchers that the Orioles were facing early in the season. And it kind of made sense. And I gave kudos to Mike Elias and the Orioles for not really letting service time play a factor in the way that I thought that it would. And he came up and he made his major league debut in Boston at Fenway Park. And as we know, it hasn't gone perfectly, certainly, for Jackson Holliday so far this season at the plate. He made his major league debut. It took him a little while to get that first hit. He finally got it on that Sunday at home against Milwaukee that helped kind of kickstart a comeback rally for the Orioles late in that game. But overall, he ended up with 36 plate appearances over the course of 10 games he appeared in for the Orioles. A 2 for 34, which is an .059 batting average, not very good. 2 for 34. He had 2 walks to 18 strikeouts. Yes, he struck out more than 50% of the time that he was at the plate with just those 2 walks, scored 5 runs for the Orioles. That is a 111 on base percentage and a 170 OPS. Now, first of all, 36 plate appearances for a 20-year-old is about as small a sample size as you can possibly imagine to judge someone. And I don't think in any way this is a hit on Jackson Holliday. This shows that he's definitely not ready. This shows he's going to be a bust. It's nothing like that, right? Guys across baseball over the years come up, struggle, go back down, get back to the big leagues and get better. We just saw it with Grayson Rodriguez last season. But of course, there is parts of this where it makes you wonder about the timing, about his psyche, about what he needs to do in AAA to get back to the big leagues. I think that is another big part of this. It's like, okay, the Orioles sent him down at first and they said they wanted him to face more big league caliber left-handers. Well, you can't really do that in AAA. Wanted to play more second base. That box he checked. He played a lot of innings at second in Norfolk early this year before he got called back up. And that hasn't been the issue. Holliday has been great at second base. Statcast has had him at 3 outs above average at second base. He has been defensively, according to Statcast, a top 5 second baseman defensively in baseball. It's the 10 games he's played in, so you don't want to take fielding advanced statistics after 10 games at face value. But even the eye test, I feel like he's generally passed at second base. So I don't think we need to worry about that. My thought here, and I don't think the Orioles are sending him back down to now manipulate the service time. I mean, now that he's back in AAA, the Orioles will get the extra year of service time because he accrued enough time in AAA early, and now he has to be down for another 10 days before they can call him back up. That means he will not hit the required 172 days on the big league roster to be eligible for that year of service time. So Holliday will now become a free agent. I believe it would be after 2030 now instead of after 2029. It might be after 2031. Either way, they're getting the extra year on the end now. But back to why they would send him down. On face value, you're saying, well, Connor, he's 2 for 34. That's why they're sending him down. Well, what I've argued on the show a couple of times over the last week or so as he's begun to struggle and people have started asking questions, okay, should he really go down, is a couple of things. One has been, he just needs to figure out how to hit major league pitching. Every single player that comes up generally goes through some growing pains where they need to hit major league pitching. Adley Rutschman was a disaster when he first got to the bigs. Those first couple of weeks, I think every Adley at bat was a rolled over soft ground ball to second base. He just could not square up the baseball. Gunnar Henderson hitting under 200 for 2 months at the beginning of last season before he turned it around and won AL Rookie of the Year. Like, there's been a lot of big names. They show, I think it was the Willie Mays was like 1 for 26 to begin his career and got sent back down to AAA. Like, there's been a lot of great players who have started really, really slowly in their big league careers and have still gone on to be amazing players. It's because it's really hard to transition from AAA to the big leagues. And the thing is, the gap between AAA and the big leagues might be larger now than it has ever been. And that is where I kind of question the thought of, okay, let's just get him back to AAA to kind of get his swing back. Because if you're just worried about, okay, he needs to figure out how to hit big league caliber pitching, there is not a lot of league caliber pitching in AAA right now because teams want arms so bad. And because there are so many pitching injuries, which leads to so many guys on the IL, anybody that can sniff the big leagues talent-wise is in the majors right now. They are not in AAA. And that's what I talked about when Mike Elias said we want him to face high-caliber lefties, especially with left-handed pitchers. With anybody who has any skill and is left-handed is pretty much in the big leagues. There really aren't any high-caliber lefties that he can face in AAA. So to me, it was like the only way he's going to figure out how to hit big league pitching is to just work through it in the big leagues. And the best part was for the O's, like, this Baltimore team keeps winning. And that's been the best part of this. They have surged into first place since calling up Jackson Holliday. They have continued to win baseball games. And, he's sat against some lefties. He's mostly playing against righties. He's hitting ninth. And most of the time he's been in the lineup, the other 8 guys have been hitting. The Orioles have the number 1 offense in baseball right now, despite getting nothing from Jackson Holliday when he's out there. So it's kind of been a good spot. It's not like the Orioles are struggling offensively. That would be a different conversation to be like, they can't have this black hole in there right now, before they turn things around. Like, we need some production out of the 9 hole. It's like, no, the Orioles' top 8 batters were producing so much that this was the perfect time to keep Jackson Holliday in the 9 hole and let him figure it out. And the other part about the timing that's a little weird to me is that they're playing the A's this weekend, and Oakland has been as 10-16. They have been better than expected this year. They have some solid arms, but it's 2 right-handed starters this weekend against the A's. The offense is humming. It would have been a nice time to just keep him at the bottom of the order. And the other thing is, he's coming off his best swing as a big leaguer in the Orioles' last game, or at least the last game that he played, which would be Tuesday night. He finally was able to sit back on a breaking ball. He had been swinging through so much breaking stuff in the zone. He sits back on a curveball from Griffin Canning on Tuesday night, rips it up the middle, 104 off the bat, his hardest hit ball in the big leagues for a base hit, his second knock. And I got to think that was a big confidence boost in the last game he played in on Tuesday. So if he had gone another 0 for 3 in that game with 3 strikeouts, I would even understand this a little bit more. But it's like, I felt like he finally took a little step forward, and that's the time that the O's sent him down. I just feel like, yeah, 2 for 34 is not good. But with all the other Orioles hitting, this felt like they could keep him up there and just kind of let him figure it out. And that's just what I'm worried about, is that he's not going to be able to figure out big league pitching in AAA. You just got to face it at the big leagues. And I worry that when he does come back up, because he will come back up this season, and hopefully it'll be soon, I'm worried that he's going to have to go through another growing process for a week or two until he finally gets back into that groove. You can't face big league caliber pitching at the AAA level. So what I am worried about, and I think I saw a comment here, let's see where this was. Yeah, it was Raven Lunatic here, and asking, do they want him to tone down the leg kick? I'm unsure if it is about the leg kick. We've already gotten some quotes. Sam Blum had that piece in The Athletic earlier this week where he talked to Holliday. He talked to the Orioles hitting coaches just about kind of what's going on with this slow start, and the O's are trying to tinker with things. I think the main reason to send him down would not be to say, hey, we need more just at-bats against good pitching. We need more time at second base. It's not those things. I think they want him in a more controlled environment, and I'm worried that something mechanically is off. Because the number one reason to send a guy down to AAA who is this good, despite having some struggles early in the year, is that there's something mechanical you want to work on. It is hard to work on something and really focus on something mechanically when you're in the big leagues, because when you're there, you want to compete and be in the lineup every day. When you're in AAA, the Orioles can sit him for 2 days and just have him work in the batting cage on something mechanically. Then on the third day, he can hit, and they could say, we're not worried about if you get a hit right now. We're worried about if you're doing those mechanical adjustments at the plate. If you go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, it's okay in AAA as long as you are working on that specific thing in your at-bats. You can't do that at the big league level. You're trying to win games. In AAA, it's still about development. So to me, and we haven't heard yet from Mike Elias yet. I'm recording here again. We're live on YouTube, 3:30 Friday afternoon. If Mike Elias does start speaking and I miss it, somebody put it in the comments for me. But I'd like to see what their reasoning is, because certainly Elias, you would think, would address the media about this big a move. But to me, it feels like something mechanical, because that would be the number one reason to go to AAA. And if that's the case, I'm okay with this move, because you want him to be in kind of that more secure, more developmental environment. Hey, go down there for 2 weeks. Let's work on this one thing, and then we'll call you back up sometime in May, and hopefully you can hit the ground running. That's what I hope it is. If it's not, I'm really against this decision, and much more for just let him figure it out, because he will. He's that talented to figure it out at the big league level. But I will say, I've made it clear, I disagree with this decision on face value. I think he should have stayed up here. But there are serious arguments, valid opinions, that he should have gone down to AAA now. I made it clear that I thought, okay, if he struggles for a couple more weeks here, I'd probably send him down in mid-May, but send him down now. And it's okay if you agree with this opinion. I think there is valid takes there. The part of this that I think irks me more is what the Orioles did with the corresponding move and how the roster looks now. Because you look at it and you're like, you went with these guys to fit in, and nothing against the guy. He's been with the Orioles for a while. He seems to be well-liked in the clubhouse. But the optics of calling up Ryan McKenna to replace Jackson Holliday, we'll get to that and how the roster shapes out now while Holliday is back in Norfolk, coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by DoorDash. Now, you know about DoorDash, I'm sure at this point, but there's a lot more that you can get on DoorDash than you even thought, and especially anything you might need for Mother's Day, because it's never too late to show your mom your love this Mother's Day with DoorDash. Surprise mom with flowers, gadgets, self-care essentials, all in one place, delivered right to her door. You can get thoughtful gifts she deserves with convenience that you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Shop with savings that would make your mom proud. With a DashPass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduce service fees on eligible orders from DashPass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees apply and terms apply as well. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That is code LOCKEDONMLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, Or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with the DK Law Group. The DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and to serve you faster. And one of the things you will quickly notice, I know I have DK Law Group, it's their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and leaving no one in limbo. So contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On listeners can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So we are live here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast right here where you are now. We're talking the big news of the day. The Orioles deciding to option Jackson Holliday, their top prospect, after a tough 2-for-34 start. They send him down to AAA Norfolk. And I went through in the first segment kind of my thoughts generally on why I disagree with the move, why I could see them doing it, and how it all might play out. Now, I do think Holliday, as long as there's something they want him to work out, and he works on it, he will be back here shortly. And I think people worried about the psyche, whether leaving him in the big leagues to struggle messes with his psyche, or you think sending him down to AAA so quickly messes with his psyche. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. He's been in big league clubhouses. He's been around his dad, Matt Holliday, a great all-star big leaguer. Like, he's been through this stuff before. It's just, this is the first time he's ever really failed at baseball. He's always been literally the best player on the field. Up until he got to the big leagues, you could argue he's been the best player on the field in every single game he's played in. So this is new for him. And I wanted him to be able to work it out at the big league level, but the Orioles felt there was something specific maybe to work on in AAA. So either way, he is down in Norfolk. So the next question is, okay, who is replacing him? And somewhat surprisingly, the name is Ryan McKenna. And listen, I understand the reaction that Ryan McKenna gets, and I had a similar one. Ryan McKenna, who was not on the 40-man roster, was added to the 40-man and was called up to replace Holliday. David Bonuelos, the third catcher, was DFA'd to make room for McKenna on the Orioles 40-man roster. But either way, Ryan McKenna is here for the Orioles, and that brings a lot of questions as well. Why Ryan McKenna? Why still Ryan McKenna? Now, the first answer to that question would be, well, Austin Hayes is on the injured list. Hayes, of course, went on the 10-day IL, retroactive to Sunday the 21st with he had the calf issue, came out of the game last weekend and went on the IL. He is eligible to return on May 1st next week. Brandon Hyde made it seem like it would be a very, very quick injury stint. And McKenna is kind of the easiest one-for-one replacement for Austin Hayes, right? He's a right-handed hitter. He plays all outfield positions well, all three of them. He can run a little bit. Can't really hit. He used to be able to hit lefties. Can't really do it anymore, but he's a solid, like, one-for-one replacement for Hayes, just a guy who you would play less than Austin Hayes because objectively, Austin Hayes is despite his struggles this year, much better player than Ryan McKenna is. But here's where my questions come in. If you're just saying, okay, Ryan McKenna is just here to replace Austin Hayes. As soon as Hayes comes back, he's just a better version of Ryan McKenna. We just put Hayes back on the roster and we DFA Ryan McKenna. That all makes sense. So why wasn't McKenna the guy you just called up on Tuesday when Hayes went on the injured list? Wouldn't that make a lot of sense? Instead, the Orioles went with Heston Kjerstad, which I was a huge fan of. I love Heston Kjerstad, one of his biggest supporters. I was so happy to see him in the big leagues. He got the start in Tuesday night's game, did go over 4 with 3 strikeouts, but it was nice to see him back in the bigs after he had, his nice first call up in September of last year and made the Orioles playoff roster. But now you look at this roster. Holliday down, McKenna up, Hayes on the IL. You have Kjerstad here. And we have a lineup right now for Friday night's game against Oakland. And this is pretty much what this lineup is going to look like, at least now, against right-handed pitching. Orioles are facing a right-handed starter Friday night against the A's. And you have Gunnar Henderson leading off at shortstop, Adley Rutschman catching and hitting second. You have Ryan O'Hearn in there as the DH for the Orioles. You, of course, have Ryan Mountcastle in there because he's been playing so well that he is an everyday player at this point for the O's. Santander in right field, Mountcastle at first, Mullins in center field. He's been swinging it really well. Westberg at second. We know how good he's been. Cowser in left. We know how good he's been. And then you have hitting ninth, basically in Jackson Holliday's place, is Ramon Arias playing third base. Now, Arias has swung it better as of late. He's still only hitting 194 on the season, but the bat has heated up a little bit over the past week and change, and that's been nice for Arias, and we know how good he is with the glove at both second and third base. But with Jackson Holliday down in AAA and McKenna here and Kerstad here as well, essentially, unless you call up another infielder at some point, you are guaranteeing that either Jorge Mateo or Ramon Arias, basically one of the two, going to the start lineup every single day. And that was okay a couple of years ago. But at this point, I am fine with Arias and Mateo as bench players. I think they can both help your team. I would argue Mateo helps you a little bit more than Arias does as a bench player. But even with the struggling Jackson Holliday, I personally, and you can let me know in the comments if you disagree, I personally would much rather just send Jackson Holliday out there every day to figure it out with the ceiling of talent he has than platoon Ramon Arias and Jorge Mateo in the infield. Now, I love what Mateo can bring defensively and as a pinch runner, and he can hit lefties, and I like the well-roundedness of Arias's game, but they're kind of just going to be in a platoon here. Now, Westberg will move between second and third, but you can basically look at it like Arias, who's kind of a reverse splits guy. He's been better against righties than lefties. He will start against righties. And then Mateo, who still hits lefties well, he will start at second base against left-handed starters. And that's basically what the Orioles are going to do until they either bring Jackson Holliday back or call up another infielder. And it's nice to have Mateo and Arias. They've been starters the last couple of years for the O's, a lot of big league at-bats, a lot of experience. And you know they're going to hit ninth no matter what when they are in the order because the top 8 has been amazing. But here's the thing. Like, you can argue, okay, Connor, just think of it as McKenna replaces Hayes and Kerstad replaces Holliday as a left-handed hitter. Like, think of it like that. Okay, but where do you play Heston Kerstad? And that's kind of the confusing thing here about the roster right now. You are being forced to play either Arias or Mateo, but you just have to put Kerstad, objectively a better hitter than both of those guys, on the bench because he can't play the infield except for first base. He can't play second or third base. So you're looking at, okay, where does Kerstad play? We've talked about this already when he got called up. There's just really nowhere for him to play. You'd like him to play against right-handed pitching. That's who he can mash. But as you see from Friday night's lineup, he's not going to play against righties because against righties, you have to get Cowser in left, Mullins in center, Santander in right, O'Hearn at DH, and Mountcastle at first base. You have to get all those guys in because right now they're all still better than Kerstad. So there's then no place for Kerstad to play. So if you're going to give Kerstad at bats, it basically has to be against lefties. And even then, it's tough to get him in there because what the Orioles have done, you see just in general way more righties than you see lefties. So the O's have done a good job of this year. When they see a lefty, they use that as a chance to DH Adley Rutschman to give him kind of a half day off to save his legs, but still get him in the lineup. And then you use James McCann as your catcher because just historically, he's been a much better hitter against lefties. He's more of a serviceable big league hitter against lefties, and you can have him be a solid catcher as well. So generally, when you see a lefty, DH is taken by Adley because James McCann is catching. Colton Cowser's been so good, you still want him out there every day. Santander, you want out there every day. Ryan Mountcastle, of course you want out there. So Mountcastle at first base, Santander's in right. You got Cowser in left. Really the only way to get Kerstad in there, because you got Adley at DH as well, is if you sit Mullins against left-handers. Now, Mullins has struggled this year against left-handed pitching, and he struggled some last year, so it's a possibility. You would have to move essentially Cowser to center, but then at Oriole Park, like, I'm not a big believer of Cowser in center, but I think he can play the position. But then if you're trying to get Kerstad in there, you have Kerstad and Santander, both okay in the outfield, not great. You don't want to play either of those guys in left field at Camden Yards, but you're forced to play one of them in left field at Camden Yards if you're going to play him against lefties. So my worry is that, well, what's Ryan McKenna here to do? Maybe if they're going to sit Cedric Mullins against lefties, Ryan McKenna is here to play center against the lefties, and Cowser's in left, and you're still sitting Heston Kerstad. So what is Heston Kerstad here to do? Essentially be a pinch hitter late in games for either Arias or Mateo. So let's say here on Friday night, the O's are down 4-3 in the 8th inning, runner on first and one out, and Ramon Arias is due up. They would probably use Heston Kerstad as a pinch hitter. Hopefully he gets a pinch hit, big hit, gets on base. Then Jorge Mateo pinch runs for him, and then Mateo stays in the game defensively at second base, replacing Arias. You have Kerstad here essentially as a pinch hitter, and you kind of have McKenna here for no reason, because I think the thought is, oh, Ryan McKenna can hit lefties. No, he can't. Look at his stats. Last year, he was just as bad at the plate against left-handers than he was against righties. I don't want McKenna starting any games. I don't care that he was, according to Danielle Allentuck of the Baltimore Banner, working on second base defensively in AAA Norfolk. And now you see him get called up to replace Jackson Holliday. As I said on Twitter on Friday, I will become the Joker if Ryan McKenna starts a game at second base for the Baltimore Orioles while Jackson Holliday and Connor Norby and Kobe Mayo sit in AAA. That's the thing that just doesn't make as much sense. Like, okay, you want Kjerstad here. Okay, you want McKenna to replace Hayes. I get it. But if you're not starting Kjerstad at all, which is possible, they might not be able to find a way to start Kjerstad at all. The only reason he started on Tuesday is because Ryan Mountcastle was out with a sore knee, so they were able to get Kjerstad in the lineup. Is it really worth it to have Heston here if he literally has no way into the starting lineup? And I see a good comment here from Tim, and I'm seeing it from a lot of people. It suggests it's a short-term move. It absolutely does, Tim. The weirdness of this roster absolutely suggests that maybe they just, Holiday has to stay down for a minimum of 10 days. Maybe the Orioles are just saying, go down for 2 weeks, work on something, and in mid-May, you will be back. That's hopefully the thing here. But it just feels like if you're going to do it and you want to maximize the roster, this is kind of what it wants to, or at least I want to boil it down to. We are guaranteed to see Arias or Mateo in the lineup every single day until Holiday comes back. Wouldn't you rather just give those at-bats to Connor Norby or Kobe Mayo and just say, hey, you got a 2-week shot at the big leagues. Let's see what you can do. I think I would. So yeah, I'm upset with the Holiday going down, but I'm a little more upset on what they did on the flip side. And there's a little bit of optics here as well. It's like, it's Ryan McKenna. I thought we had moved on from Ryan McKenna. We have not. I don't think he's going to start any games. I hope he doesn't, but he could. I really hope he doesn't. He probably won't. He's just kind of there to play some defense, pinch run, do what you need off the bench till Hayes comes back. I don't know. I feel bad for Heston Kjerstad. He can't really replace Holiday. There's nowhere for him to play. Instead, we got to watch Arias or Mateo every single day in the lineup. Like, wouldn't you rather just see Norby or Mayo in there every day for 2 weeks? Yeah, I think I would, just to give him a little try out there. But again, it is the optic. It's like, I know McKenna for Holiday is not exactly the one-for-one move roster building wise, but it is the roster move you made. And it just looks bad. And the O's have done a lot of bad optics. And they've still made good decisions overall. And I get that the optics aren't close to being that important. It's just more annoying as a fan, right? Like, you trade Jorge Lopez and you trade Trey Mancini at the deadline in 2022 when you are in playoff position. I understand those two trades so far working out pretty well for the Orioles. They got a lot back for both of those trades, especially the Jorge Lopez one. But you can't argue that the optics were terrible. The optics were so bad, Mike Elias, after doing that deal, had to fly down to Texas to calm down the Orioles locker room because they were so pissed that they just traded away 2 of their veteran leaders. You have the optics of throughout the offseason, Elias continuing to say, Holiday's getting every chance. Holiday's getting every chance. And it really turned out he didn't have really every chance to make the opening day roster. And again, the decision-making has been really good across the board. They just won 101 games, but it'd be nice as a fan to have the optics a little bit better. The other thing, as a fan, I know Holiday's struggling, right? He's been kind of tough to watch a little bit. All the strikeouts have been tough. As a fan, I don't know if you could argue I'd rather watch Ramon Arias hit every day than Jackson Holliday. I don't think you can really argue that, and that's kind of where I fall in ultimately here with this one. But I think Tim and others made a good point. With the roster looking weird, so many outfielders, not enough good infielders, it does scream, hey, Holiday's going to be down there for 2 weeks max. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to get him back up here. And I hope that's what happens. We'll see if one of these guys, maybe, Arias or Mateo, takes this chance and runs and says, hey, I'm hitting well enough to be the everyday guy for 2 weeks till Holiday comes back. That would be awesome. And honestly, this one is, not a comment I maybe... Either way, people are saying that Mike Elias is kind of a doctor with a bad bedside manner. I think that's a pretty good way to describe Mike Elias. They had one of the accounts here in the comments right here. Not going to put the whole comment up there, but basically saying Mike Elias is a good doctor who has terrible bedside manner. That's kind of true about Mike Elias, honestly. I think that's a really good way to put it. But hey, chance for Mateo, for Arias. Maybe they take it. Just hopefully it does mean that he's coming right back up to the big leagues. But I'm going to take one more break here. Going to come back. We're almost at 30 minutes on the live episode, but why not? We're live here on a Friday. It's a beautiful day in Baltimore. Let's take some questions. Get your questions in the chat. It can be about Holiday. It can be about McKenna. It can be about the O's. It can be about Oakland this weekend. Anything you want. We'll answer a few questions to finish off the pod. That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, hoping the Washington Capitals tonight can kind of get themselves back in this series. Listen, the Caps were not very good this year, and they probably should be swept by the Rangers, but maybe they can win a game at home in DC tonight. You also got the NBA playoffs. You got baseball in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So we're back here with the big news of the day, live on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Jackson Holliday sent down to AAA. Ryan McKenna, he lives. Can't kill off Ryan McKenna, I'll tell you that. He is going to stick around for a long, long time. He's got a roster spot again for the Orioles as they go into this 3-game weekend series against the Oakland A's. And now I'm going to take a few of your questions here just to finish off this episode of the podcast. Again, it can be about the Holiday move and kind of everything surrounding it, or just can be about the Orioles in general, or anything else if you want to here. You know, Friday afternoon, again, beautiful day in Baltimore. Let's see. We've got some questions here. Let's go to Dead Taco here. Do you think Samuel Basallo is a trade piece this coming trade deadline? And what do you think they could get with him? I think the Orioles value Basallo probably too much at this point to trade him. He is going to be a top 5 prospect in baseball by the end of this year. Now, he's off to a little bit of a slow start in AA Bowie, but that's because A, he's 19 years old in Bowie, where the average age is 24, and B, he's still dealing with a little bit of a stress fracture in his elbow, which is why he's not catching it all. He's just playing first base and DHing because it is his throwing elbow. Once he gets fully healthy, I'll start to grade him out, but he could be a legitimate dude at the big league level, unless there's like a just drop dead another ace to pair with Burns that the O's can get. I don't think they would move Samuel Basallo at the deadline. I've seen this question a lot. Let's see. We got Alyssa with this question. We got Johnny with this question. We've got Snarniak with this question. A lot of people asking this one. Can the Orioles go get Mason Miller from the Athletics? We are most likely going to see Mason Miller this weekend. Who is Mason Miller? Mason Miller was a pitching prospect for the A's who they tried to turn into a starter. It just wasn't working out for a little bit, so they moved him into the bullpen. Miller throws 103 miles per hour with his fastball, and I don't think you can argue this. Miller so far this year, despite the A's being 10-16, has been the best closer in baseball. He's been virtually unhittable with a good slider and a devastating fastball at 103. Alyssa's right. The dude is a beast. Here's the issue. Mason Miller I don't know if he has rookie eligibility still left. Either way, he's in either like his first or second year of service time at this point. And Mason Miller is not a free agent until after the 2030 season. So at that point, the Athletics, although they are just tearing things apart, and John Fisher is a disaster and moving the team to Sacramento and then maybe Las Vegas. I mean, who even knows? I feel so bad for Oakland fans. John Fisher, one of the worst people in baseball that's really ever been a part of this game. Mason Miller in an Oriole uniform would be awesome. The Orioles aren't going to move him, or the A's, I should say. They just aren't going to move him, right? Maybe they could move him one day. The Orioles would have to give out an insane amount to get a Mason Miller with 5 years of team control left who's that good. You'd have to give up so much. And a guy who still could be a starting pitcher. Like, he is only 25. He is not set in stone a reliever at this point. He is very good, though. I just don't think the A's, even though they've moved a lot of guys, they shouldn't be moving him, because if there's anybody in the A's front office who thinks they can win baseball games at some point in the near-ish future, Mason Miller's still going to be a part of those teams. It just doesn't make sense for them to deal away Mason Miller at this point. But I will tell you, wow, that is a fun arm to watch. And let me tell you, if the Orioles are down heading into the ninth inning in a save situation, we've been used to the last couple of years, the A's having nobody to save those games. The A's have a dude to save those games right now. So the O's do not want to get in a spot where they are down heading into the ninth. It is not going to be a good time if they want to face Mason Miller. Here's a good question right now I didn't really get to in the first two segments, but really relates. This is from DTK, who asked, when Hayes comes back, does Kjerstad get sent back down or McKenna DFA'd? I suspected they were looking for any way possible to get McKenna back so Kjerstad goes down. Yeah, if Hayes does come back, let's say Hayes comes back a week from now, right? The injury's fine. He's ready to go. Next Friday, he's back with the Orioles. It would truly be between McKenna and Kjerstad to go down. If Kjerstad is doing well in like this pinch hitting role and is hitting, I think it could be McKenna that goes down just because, I mean, what do you need McKenna for at all if Hayes is back? Like Hayes at this point is the fourth outfielder who hits right-handed and is a defensive replacement. So there's no need for McKenna. At the very least, Kjerstad could be a good pinch hitter. So in that sense, I would just DFA McKenna. But if the O's want to hold on to McKenna, they're worried at all they would lose him. Kjerstad can be optioned, McKenna can't, so it's possible. I do think, though, it would be McKenna, and Kjerstad would maybe stick around a little bit longer, and potentially Kjerstad would just stay here until maybe Holliday eventually comes back in 2 weeks, and that's when Kjerstad would go down to AAA. Let's see. We got some good questions here. This is a question from Luis. Actually, Luis, I'm not going to answer this question because the Orioles just answered this question right before I went live here on Friday. Luis's question is, do you think Albert Suarez or John Means should start this game on Sunday against the A's? That was the toss-up. The Orioles were kind of figuring out, should we bring John Means back? Should we have him do one more rehab start? The Orioles did announce on Friday, Brandon Hyde said it to the media, John Means will make his final rehab start in AAA Norfolk on Sunday, which means, by process of elimination, Albert Suarez will start the game for the Orioles on Sunday, trying to make it a third consecutive scoreless start for kind of this 34-year-old wonder arm that the Orioles picked out of nowhere. What a great story he's been so far. Hopefully he can have another great start like that against Oakland. But this will be Means' final rehab start. He must be activated back to the Orioles roster by Tuesday. That is April 30th. So most likely, I think they can actually wait till Wednesday maybe, but he'll probably be back with the O's Wednesday. And then most likely he's going to start Friday or Saturday next weekend. So that's when you can kind of pencil in when John Means will make his return to the Orioles. Got time for just a few more questions here. Got a kind of a question from Mike here about Connor Norby and asking about, has Mike Elias created a major unneeded controversy about bringing Holliday back up? If they brought up a prospect like Norby, yeah, I just don't think they're going to do it, Mike. But I think a better question here is like, what does Norby have to do to get a shot here? And there's a question right here on the screen. I don't know at this point. Like, I've been of the opinion that Connor Norby is probably going to get traded at this year's deadline as the O's add some pitching for the stretch run. He's just no prospect during this entire rebuild has been blocked at the major league level more than Connor Norby is. But if there was going to be an opening, it was going to take one of two things. One would be like a major injury in the infield. And two would be one of these young guys struggling and getting sent down when we didn't think it would happen. This is, even though Holliday struggled, somewhat of a surprising demotion of Jackson Holliday. I'd rather see Connor Norby than Arias or Mateo for 2 weeks at second base. I figured this would be his shot. If he's not getting called up here, I think he's just trade bait at this point for the Orioles. It stinks for Connor Norby. I could tell you he's most likely not happy at this point, but I don't think Norby really is going to get a shot at all at this point. Let's see if we got any more questions here in the chat. Again, thank you so much for tuning in for this live episode on a Monday. Thomas asking, is there any particular prospect that seems the most likely to be a trade piece? It's Connor Norby. I think it is. I think I just kind of answered the question right there. He is just so blocked at this point that I feel bad for him. Again, he's a great hitter. The defense is okay, but yeah, there's a good comment here. Connor Norby for Mason Miller. Let's do it. It's going to take a little more than Connor Norby. That could be a starting point, but would that solve both people's problems? Wouldn't solve the A's problems, but it would probably solve some Orioles problems, so I would do that, but the A's most likely saying no to that. A question from Justin. I get that thought on Norby, but then why not Kobe Mayo? Justin, he's right in that vicinity there. Norby maybe makes a little more sense because he's had more AAA time and he's more of a second baseman, which is a little more of the need when you send Holliday down. But Kobe Mayo could have certainly been the guy. You could have called up Kobe Mayo, put him at third base, put Westberg at second base, and said go for 2 weeks and see what happens. Now, I get the O's want Mayo to get a little more seasoning at AAA. Norby, again, just makes sense because he spent way more time in Norfolk at this point. But yeah, I would have gone with Mayo just to give him a chance. They didn't. It is what it is at this point. See if I can get to one more question here. Let's see. B-Man with a question. What are the chances Holliday stays in AAA till the fall? Basically zero, unless he gets injured. he's going to be back up at some point this season. And the last question I'll get to is from Tyler. How do you feel about being the number 2 baseball podcast in Denmark? Tyler, I want to know who the Danes have as number 1, and we will fight. We will fight for the number 1 spot in Denmark. Let me know who is number 1 in Denmark, and we'll go at it, and we'll put it live on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. That'll do it for today's Friday episode. Thank you so much for tuning in for the live stream. If you're listening afterwards via audio, thank you so much for tuning in as well. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. It's the O's and the A's for 3 games this weekend. Ross Stripling, the veteran. The A's have lost all 5 of his starts so far this year. He goes up against Corbin Burns. The Orioles have won all 5 of his starts this year. Let's hope that continues. A 7:05 start on Friday. Saturday, JP Sears, really interesting lefty for the A's. He's been good this year. Against Cole Irvin, coming off 6 2/3 scoreless, Irvin faces his old team at 4 o'clock on Saturday, and then 1:35 on Sunday. Paul Blackburn has been pretty solid, back from injury. The righty for the A's will go up against, not officially announced yet by the Orioles, but we know at this point, Albert Suarez will make his 3rd start for the O's on Sunday. I'll be back next week recapping the Orioles and the A's series. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.